So your question was, what was your question again?
Well, you
Was
said
it?
that there's a sense that there's a separation there, that I'm not the thought, I'm not the
Yeah,
thinking, I'm the one, I'm the awareness.
right. But then I realized that's a thought.
Sure, right. Yeah, so that can feel kind of, I think it feels trippy, being like, wait, you start to notice that the mind is co-opting instantly every single recognition that arises. So it's this unnecessary narrator putting words to what's already known.
Yeah, it is. It's incredibly trippy.
Yeah. Yeah. I earlier on in this process, when there was a lot more fear, like so much fear, not about this per se, but it was feeding into it. You know what I mean? Uh, I There was great resistance to that realization. It didn't feel good to me.
Same. Yeah. Sometimes it feels very existential. It feels like I'm losing someone extremely close to me.
Yourself.
Yeah. It feels like I've heard a lot of people say that it's like free fall.
Mm.
That whole thing of I have a thought that comments on a thought, and I realize it's a thought, but that's a thought that's realizing it's a thought, that's a thought that's realizing it's a thought forever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not infinite, but I know what you mean.
it's not infinite.
Well, the experience of it will not be. I mean, this isn't life now. It's not just the continual
I
occurrence of
gotcha.
this. It will tire itself out
Mm,
because there's really nothing else to sort of think about. And as soon as you get used to what this is, it will no longer be interesting. So that's the important thing about your attention is it has to be interesting, right? You're interested
yeah,
in the contents of mind because there's a belief in the experience that it's you. So
right.
everything it's saying is of interest. And so you're just always, but a continuous loop of this is not going to be interesting for that long, you know? It too shall pass. It's just gonna,
Yeah, yeah. And it's the funny thing about like those things that I hear over and over again from all these teachers. When you just said this too shall pass reminds me of one of the great foundations of Buddhism, that nothing stays the same. Everything changes. And in one sense, like if I'm in a good mood, I can, rest assured that I'm not going to be in a good mood forever. And when I'm in a bad mood, I know I'm not going to be in a bad mood. Um, but what I was going to say is it's so interesting how new connections are made with that truth that I hadn't thought of that infinite regress that we were just talking about as in the context of this too shall pass.
mm.
And that feels like a little, oh,
Mhm.
right. Oh yeah, that of course. Everything everything is temporary. Even that. And then
Yeah.
something else will come into my life and it'll be like, oh, that too is temporary, you know?
A, a new level of that for me is that the mind will say this too. When encountering things out in the world, it's like, this too is of me. The new level to it is this love toward it, which 6 months ago, if I made a video in my car talking about how there's no other, it still hadn't occurred to me. So it's like, you know,
Yeah,
there's a continuous deepening of levels. That's
yeah,
beautiful.
totally finding that. And not just the infinite regress or the impermanence of things, but recognizing thoughts and on different levels,
Hmm.
like there'll be a moment where I catch myself kind of playing out a story in my mind, maybe an old story, and there will be that pause and realization that this is just a thought, and it felt so real, right? Like I was
Hmm.
so involved with it, I was so identified with it, and then for the first time, whatever specific thought or situation or idea that comes into the light of recognition, I guess, as a thought and not me. But
In the relative and in the short term, this realization can feel isolating in part because you're no longer going to care about things that you used to care about. So I sense that you're kind of at the beginning of this, like, well, yeah, I feel these things, but I'm the awareness. I'm the awareness of the feeling of the things. There's going to start to be a decrease in that, in the feeling of that. And what it's rooted in is oneness, is the recognition that all is already well. The mind,
yeah,
the mind can present formidable resistance to that idea. So there may
can I
be,
ask, just when you say the mind can present formidable resistance to that, isn't that also it? Like, isn't that also this? Like this moment, where the mind is presenting formidable resistance is also it, right?
what do you mean by it? Oh, like part of the all is well?
Yeah, part of everything, part of what is.
Yeah. Yeah, but you'll notice that when resistance comes up and I accept it as it falls away. So there's this kind of thing in the mind that's like, well, I should also, accept that anger is going to be coming up. But when you do that, typically you're taking all the power out of anger. So it won't be prominent. It comes up like you might see it come up for an animal in a moment as a sense of something's wrong, and then it goes away.
Hmm.
So it won't be held on to, and this like a big part of the experience.
I feel like there's not really understanding for that. I feel there. It feels like stickiness or um, re resistance to you talking about resistance. I remember reading in I Am That with Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, and the guy's asking him, well, what about all these problems in the world and how awful everything is? You're telling me that everything's okay? And his answer is, well, in your world, that's what's going on, but not in my world.
Right.
Uh,
Do you see that? Do you see that
yeah,
distinction?
yeah, because everything that is is my world.
My perspective, my where my attention goes is my reality.
Mhm.
If my attention is in myself, all of this arises within myself. That's an entirely different experience.
Yeah. I mean, is that how it is? Is that your attention is
So it's a combination right now. the way that I approach what's happening in the world is mostly detached, which is still kind of wild. That's still like, wow. There's a part that's like, am I supposed to feel bad? I think I'm supposed
Yeah.
to feel bad right now about this. So there's still this thing that's like, I don't know. But overall, I don't. I do know that all is well. The other thing is not knowing. In the relative, I don't know if that's bad. You know, if you look at something like COVID, the world for like 3 weeks was so happy. They were like, just stay home. We're not going to drive our cars. The earth is going to heal itself. This
Yeah.
is actually like a godsend. So this is really great. Let's all just stay home.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Things kept unfolding and then it got really bad. And then people thought, well, maybe. And now what we're kind of in, maybe, is something like a mass awakening event following a mass perceived trauma event. So who's to say what's good and bad? This is like that parable of the guy, with he found money, but then robbers came to his house, but then because the robbers came to his house, I don't know, his son got injured and then his son wasn't sent to the military.
Yeah.
Who knows what
He
this
lost a
is going to
horse.
do?
Yeah, you never know. And it's this constantly unfolding thing. But all of that, forgive me for saying this. Um, I feel like I know so much. Like my head is so full of knowledge and
Yeah.
concepts about non-duality and enlightenment and all of it. So obviously I could always know more, I guess, um, but there's this story that I just have. These are all just concepts for me, which gives the whole game away, right? Because
Yeah,
I'm still talking about the individual or the character.
right. If we go back to Nisargadatta,
Yeah.
what does he say? He says the difference between you and me is that I know less than you.
Huh.
That's why I
I
talk
have,
about stop reading, stop watching videos. I'm only saying that to seasoned seekers who intellectually already have all the concepts. Stop watching, go within, and start testing everything that you've ever taken on, and it starts to unravel. So that's what that means. You end up knowing less. So if somebody asks my opinion on something, I'm way more likely these days to say, I don't know. I don't have enough information. Where there used to be this need almost to like make a stand on everything.
yeah,
I
have it all thought out.
Yeah, like that's what makes you smart or valuable in this game is to have stances and like contributions. But as awareness, value, or true nature really is in not taking a stand, reserving judgment, not knowing.
Yeah. And my mind hears that. And it's like, but knowing is the only thing I've ever done. The only thing.
Yeah, it's scary.
I get these moments where it feels like I'll watch Muji or something and do a guided meditation and the invitation is to just be present, be as present as you can be. And and for just like this brief little moment, it'll feel like I'm not thinking. And then I'll be like, oh, I did
Yeah.
it. There it is. Is this it? Is it happening?
Am I done?
And I love what you said last time. You were like, it's not an experience. And I keep thinking about that because experiences are just experiences. And then I made the connection the other day that experiences will never last. So whatever concept I had of whatever realization is was predicated on this idea that I was going to have an experience and it was just going to be forever. I was going to be enlightened.
Yeah. But you
And
can't, because you already are enlightened.
right. Isn't that that's so
So,
funny.
yeah,
Go ahead.
there's nothing to attain, and that's the paradox of this, is that you don't have to use this human lifetime to seek something. You're allowed to just play. That's what we're doing. And we've created this
Mine tells,
idea of attainment and like all these
yeah,
things. And it's like, I'm not sure that, I mean, it doesn't seem that animals know or like have realized their true nature, but they're living it, you know? They're
right.
excellent models for living it. They don't they don't owe rent to anyone.
They're not worried about rent.
They're not worried about their food today, even though they're not in charge of their food today.
Mm. But
Like the
there's this
lord of the
fear.
field.
But with us, and there's like a Princeton professor, Sapolsky, I think, who did studies with primates and how baboons would get into a huge tussle. The whole, I can't remember what they call it, tribe or clutch. I can't remember what a group of baboons is called, but they would all be going crazy and yelling and fighting. But after it was over, or they get chased by a lion or something, but after the zebra, but after it's over, right back to normal. It's
Exactly.
unique. It's uniquely human to rehash that shit and feel the same stress levels that you were feeling when you were actually in the situation.
Essentially to live in the past. We're
Right.
the only ones experiencing time in the illusion
Right.
way that we are, and the only reason that that's happening is the mind.
Yeah. There's this fear that if I don't watch the videos, if I don't read the books, if I don't have my daily meditation practice, that I'll miss out.
Mm.
There's this idea, this plan. It's a plan. I want to make this happen, Heather. There's this plan. There's this plan that I'm going to saturate myself so deeply with all of this stuff and all of these teachers and all of these books and videos and one-on-ones.
Sure, because it has to come from outside of you, right? That's where the
Oh,
insight
oh,
coming from.
oh, 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 that's so there. That's another one of those truths. I know that, but it just hit. It just hit different.
Yeah.
Oh man. And now I'm emotional.
Feel it.
Even that isn't outside of me.
Yeah. So I don't
Thing that I'm
know.
afraid of missing out on is already here.
It's you. It's always you. The answer to every question, every problem.
Wow.
You are what you're seeking. Stop seeking, you know? I feel
Yeah.
emotional too. Also, mm, I think I'm deleting Facebook. It's in the process of being deleted. I don't really. Anyway, before, uh, memories would come up of old things that I had posted. And 6 years ago, I posted a thing that said, "We are all one. The only thing that separates us is perceptions, opinions, egos." And
Yeah.
6 years ago, I did not understand that. So, but I posted it, so where was my perspective?
It's like your true nature is pretending to know itself by, well, your true nature is pretending not to know itself by pretending to know itself.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, I kind of see it, I see this like continually shifting thing where mind takes up more and less of the experience. So there'll be an insight where it's like full true nature. And then mind comes immediately in and
Hmm.
co-opts it and turns it into something else and has amnesia. And then it's gone. And then you rediscover it years later.
Yeah.
You realize you didn't actually know, but your true nature, you are not confused. Not
Yeah.
really. So those moments where like epiphanies come through, there's a recognition in that moment that nothing was ever wrong and that I was never confused.
Right.
It's just that mind comes back in with the confusion layer of experience and you plug attention into it again. So that's what's experienced.
Yeah. I've done the same thing.
Yeah. That's why it seems like there's so much work to do because you're just staring at this thing that says there's so much work to do. And then in an instant, you shift attention and there was never anything to do.
Yeah. I've made TikTok videos that going back and looking at them again, they feel kind of cringe, honestly. Like, how am I saying this then when I feel this way now? And all of this co-opting and programming and stuff, convincing me that I'm not who I am. Invalidating, invalidating those little moments that you were talking about where you do have an epiphany or you have a glimpse into a level and then it again, or the program comes back.
The more this happens, the more there will just be the steady recognition that this
Yeah.
happens. And that this is where paradox comes in again, which is that the more it's that kind of Dunning-Kruger thing, which is like the more I realize, the more I know what I don't know, and then the
Yeah.
wiser I become, What we are sort of missing in this picture is the fact that built into the human experience is a steady flow of wisdom that doesn't come from mind. And as long as mind is a focal point, we won't have access or we won't recognize access to that. So, wisdom is an entirely different thing than knowledge, intellectual knowledge. And actually,
Yeah.
the more we make space by recognizing what we don't intellectually know, the more wisdom comes in. If how does it go? There is no need to seek the truth simply cease to cherish opinion,
Yeah,
which is,
that feels like, go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah, which is to say, there's not some like special set of words that's going to come out that's going to, it's like releasing delusion in all its facets makes the space for what is left over, which is what is true.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, right? Like, it's not doing anything, it's not achieving anything or going anywhere or realizing anything.
Mm,
Um, it's actually letting go of all of those things, all the way down to identity is kind of how I think about it
yeah,
until there's nothing left.
right. That's why I advocate for self inquiry. And I've recognized that when I do, people seem a little disappointed.
Sorry,
Okay.
cat butt.
When I advocate for putting away the content and coming into self-inquiry, I think it's a very underwhelming idea for a lot of minds. And so people are like, yeah, okay, thanks, whatever. There's something, and I'm starting to wonder if it's actually mind, ego, knowing that it doesn't like the idea of being deconstructed. I mean? But doing this self inquiry and starting to ask if the thoughts are true and if they are me is ultimately going to bring us to identity, like you said. It's going to keep getting deeper. Those beliefs are going to get stickier and more subtle until you recognize the whole nature of this thing, the whole perception of what this is a belief that is based on a belief. And it's now reinforcing itself just based on my choice.
Sometimes it feels like a mental stress position, you know, where, let me see if I can explain this. You're talking about all the way down to this idea or this belief that this body is me.
Mm.
And there's that. And then on the other side of that is what will happen if I, what will happen if I'm not here anymore?
When you say I, you mean the character.
The, the ego, the character, the mind, identity.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
that
of course.
there's nobody driving the car, you know. And then
Ego
you start
wants to be
touching in.
valuable.
What's that?
Ego wants to be valuable, and it cannot envision a world in which it is not.
Yeah, and I've got this story that I tell myself, or the ego tells me, or whatever, that I've been through some shit and I've worked really hard on myself to get to where I am, emotionally and physically and whatever. And now you want me to just go away? Like, how could you? You know, I'm everything. I'm everything you've ever known.
But is any of it true?
Right.
Do we even know that any progress that was made by the ego?
Wow. I don't know what to do with that. That's wild. Yeah, it was never me.
20 years ago, after suppressing what needed to be felt after a so-called traumatic event, awakening started. But I didn't know awakening started. I thought I was having a mental breakdown, or, I'm an anxious person now and I'm very sensitive, and all these things I attached without looking at the whole story. But started reading books on meditation and things, and these insights started coming in. And then I thought, look at me, I'm hot shit. Look at look at
Right.
what I'm learning and now attaching to myself. And what I realize now was that that insight was never earned. It was my birthright. Resistance, the idea that I know stuff, was sort of humbled temporarily enough that these things flowed in, and they can just always do that. And me is not earning it. And it's not even me that's taking it on. If anything, me is in the way of constantly remembering these lessons. Me is the amnesia to the wisdom that comes from who I am.
So all that work you did on yourself, you never even did it.
No, and I mean, it ultimately is like this acting out a play of self-improvement until there is an utter and profound humbling in the experience.
I'm looking forward to watching this again,
I've gotten
which
beat
is
multiple times. This is it. We're on to something.
big stuff. But funny, I said that and immediately I thought, there you go, seeking again. There you go, looking for another source that's going to take you somewhere. And I appreciate what you said about it's all going to be okay. I think you said that early in the conversation.
It all, it
What's that?
all is okay.
Yeah, right.
Hello.
Oh, right. Um, that's a belief that I've held on to, um, but in the future tense,
Yeah. I'm gonna
not
say
in the
another thing. Happiness is not in the future. You cannot find happiness in the future.
right.
It's it's always now.
And I hear that. It just feels like a real mind bender,
Yeah. There's
you
still
know?
just there's still belief on some level that work needs to be done to like earn or secure happiness.
Right. And it's all okay. It's
Yeah.
okay that that belief is here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that that's the ultimate recognition, isn't it?
Right. And whatever is.
It is as it is, yeah. I am in it, but it's not essentially who I am. It doesn't even impact who I am. It can be whatever. So right now, it can be whatever. All is well.
Yeah.
We have to be very gentle with this. Otherwise, it is sort of executed by mind as a dismissal. What's that other word? Bypassing. As a That's spiritual bypassing, where
Yeah.
we ignore the experience of what's trying to come up and we say, no, everything's fine. There's a difference
Yeah,
between
that's
intellectually saying all's well, blah, 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 and then really going into it. And we can't force that to sink in. Otherwise, we create other problems. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, and I'm there. I'm with you. Um, that whole idea of spiritual bypassing and feeling like I've done something wrong, and then kind of processing that along the lines of, but that is what is,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, and there's ultimately no such thing as personal responsibility. We got to be careful with this too. We don't use it as a justification. Do dumb stuff.
Right.
It's ultimately no personal responsibility. How could there be?
And the mind hears that and it wants to say, oh, I can do, everything's okay. I can do anything. Do I need some money? I'll just rob that guy over there.
Right?
It wasn't me. It was my
Right.
character. Me, I'm untouched, says the mind, pretending to be the source or
Yeah. But yes, ultimately, there is no personal responsibility. We use this to address and clear shame, blame, guilt, because it doesn't make sense until you, what is that? When you know better, you'll do better, you'll do differently, let's say. The person was sort of mechanically created in a mechanical game. You are breathing life into this experience that has been taking all of its cues from around itself. So if you want to place blame, place it collectively, but then that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's all just reactions. This is a cause and effect machine, is what I feel like that's the best summary. This is part of that until there is recognition of true nature, and then that shifts.
Get into this like radical non-duality where I think it's not Tony Robbins. I can't remember his last name. And I think I mentioned this last time too, but the people that are like, I'm not here and nothing's happening and I'm not speaking any words, and this really hard line of non-duality. And I was raised with the programming that if there's not a system of punishment in place, then I'm going to do all kinds of bad things. It's only the threat of violence against myself through punishment of laws or whatever that's going to keep me from going crazy and hurting people.
Sure.
And so when I hear, and you're not the first person I've heard this from, but when I hear that ultimately there is no personal responsibility, it comes right head to head with that other belief that we're the only ones responsible for ourselves.
You are responsible for your experience, but not as the person.
Explain.
Uh, Continually unfolding senses that the only free will is as myself. The human is just this continually reacting chemicals, thoughts, actions, you know? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is free will once there is known to be free will as myself in where attention is placed.
You're using the word attention a lot.
That's my power. It's the only power in this experience is where my attention is placed. Is it placed on the content of thought? My entire world will be thought. Am I obsessed with the sensations of the body? The whole reality will be health paranoia about body and noticing every little thing. Do I open up? Is my attention on myself, my true self? The open, expansive field of awareness. All perception shifts to accommodate attention shifting.
Mm. And that's the whole mechanism between recognizing a thought and then recognizing your awareness of the thought.
Yeah.
And then
That,
you shift your attention from the thought itself to the awareness of the thought. Is that
yeah,
what you're saying?
exactly. That will more profoundly impact your reality. The more that there is trust in the distinction between these two, the more confident you are, the more you really know, realize, make real to yourself the distinction between you and everything else. And yet, you don't dismiss it. You know you are in all of that.
Well, that's beautiful.
Your power. So this is like the movie The Matrix. Your power is in where you look, is in your attention. And this is going back to Nisargadatta. He says, my world is me, or something like that. My world is all me.
In my world, there are no problems.
Yeah.
What do I care about what's going on? There's nothing
Yeah.
going on.
When out there, a shift of power takes place tomorrow,
Yeah.
my attention is going to entirely impact my experience of that.
Mm.
Entirely. I will be happy tomorrow. You know?
Yeah.
It's all, that's the whole difference in this shift.
That's beautiful. Sometimes it feels like I have to drag myself by the scruff of the neck to sit down on the pillow, close my eyes, and start paying attention to my thoughts.
Yeah.
But getting there, it's like, well, you haven't finished your cup of coffee yet, so go do that. Or you haven't watered the plants, or maybe you should take a shower first, or maybe you should sit down and read Heather Ralston's book and get in the right mindset, and then you can sit down. And all of these little thoughts that are like they're like distractions. Um, maybe instead of sitting down to meditate, you could scroll on TikTok or YouTube and see if any of your favorite people have posted a video that's going to make it happen.
And isn't it funny that it sounds like this is happening every day? So, you'd think if there was any real intelligence to the mind, it would have figured out by now that now I'm
Right.
meditating. But that's not
Right.
how the mind works. The mind is like an artificial intelligence. I think it is the original artificial intelligence.
Original AI. Yeah.
Haywire because of our identification with it.
Yeah. It really doesn't. It's kind of like what you said a minute ago. Um, I keep quoting you.
I didn't know it
Um,
was gonna happen in my life, to be quoted. Whew. Okay.
um, now the thought just flew out of my head, but it's that the ego is onto us. It doesn't. It kind of recognizes that. I don't remember how you put it, but it recognizes that its position is under threat.
Hmm.
And sometimes, like that whole sitting down on my meditation pillow and meditating, that whole process I just described, it feels frenetic. It feels frenzied. Sometimes I'll have I am that opened on my lap. I'll have my journal and my pen in my hand writing things, and I'll have like a TikTok video or something playing. And it's just this frenzied kind of volume of consumption of I've got to get it, I've got to get it, I've got to get it. And I'm clawing and I'm trying and I'm trying to get this thing that I already am.
So, but recent, first of all, hearing things from an MD who says ADHD is actually an adaptive tool that has gone haywire. Seeing it through that lens, recognizing it as kind of a trauma response, as learning to be anywhere but here through any means necessary. I mean, isn't that what that is?
Right. Yes, exactly.
It's just a force of avoiding this present moment with all your
Yeah,
all the mind's might for really no particular reason in this moment other than fear to be in the moment.
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
adaptive. But it's for me to see the love in it, to see the love in this frantic energy as ultimately the constructed self trying to protect itself without the true knowledge of how to do that because it lacks divine understanding. It always will. But
It's
isn't
so
that,
beautiful.
yeah, isn't that nice?
Yeah.
So even this does not need to be resisted. It can be held with love.
Yeah, it makes me think of this misconception that the ego is our enemy.
Right?
It's just trying to make it, man. It's just trying to stay around, baby.
It's just doing its job. It just
Yeah,
doesn't know what its job is. Isn't that like a child?
yeah. In the words of Heather Ralston, our last conversation, you were like, you just watch the ego play like a child in the corner. Nothing new there, but hmm. And it feels like the thing that's being avoided is the silence and the stillness.
Mhm. What's in it? What's behind it?
I don't know.
This is what the mind says.
Yeah, and the mind also says, I don't know.
And I don't know is fine as long as I mean, there tends to be resistance that comes up to the I don't know, and that's the whole thing. I don't know, and I'm scared that I don't know.
I gave my book away, but Nisargadatta. See if I can remember this because it's just so beautiful. And it was basically what you just said, that when you begin to experience this shift, these things take care of themselves.
Yeah, when you begin to seek yourself, yourself will seek you, something like that. I think might be. Yeah, when you go
But you
after
don't.
it will come at you.
Hmm.
But
I'm here.
we
Come and
just
get me.
we have to want ourselves more than we want the illusion, and that means everything. This is where we investigate attachment.
Well, I'm on the right pathless path, walking through the gateless gate.
Yeah, I mean, even from the last time we talked, I feel like this is a tremendous development.
Angelo Delulu talks about when you are around people that have that Buddha field, you can kind of recognize it. And I felt moved after our first conversation. Um, it was a lot to process or feel into,
Yeah.
but it was really helpful. It was really, really helpful to know that it's not an experience, that it's just an experience is just an experience, and that I can let that go. I can stop chasing that. And I'm not out of the woods. I still catch myself in an experience thinking, is it happening? You know, here it is. And then I'll think, but this is just an experience. This is also impermanent.
Yeah.
Um,
They are welcomed to come and go.
yeah.
What matters is the insight that's retained from them. I had a question about should I use psychedelics to assist my seeking? And the experience was that amazing things happened, but then afterwards they weren't really remembered very well.
Yeah.
Same way. And then eventually they faded. And it's the same answer. But is it bringing a lasting insight? You know, it ultimately comes down to knowing, to realizing, making real in this moment your true nature, which is to the mind boring.
Yeah. And the mind is so sneaky. Like, I've heard that when people have a realization, the response is often, it's just this, right? Like, it's so easy to overlook. And this is just me repeating what I've heard because I've got to let you know for some reason, whatever. Um, it's so easy to overlook that when you finally see it, a lot of people think or feel, well, that can't be it. That's
Yeah,
too simple.
I just posted a video about this.
I watched the first half. Was
What's
this the two-parter? Oh, okay.
No, this was just what's so funny about self-realization, because I was asked, like, why are you laughing? What are you laughing about?
Yeah.
It's like you've been dragging around this heavy bag of rocks and going, why can't I put this down?
Yeah.
And then you put it down and you realize how silly, how how playful, how ultimately loving this whole thing is. If I am experiencing all of this, I am experiencing suffering so much in the relative. And ultimately, it's to play. I mean, that's like,
Hmm. I would like to say one more thing about you're talking about carrying around this heavy weight, and how we're the ones that can just put that weight down at any time.
mm,
Um, when my mom passed away, she had she had angiosarcoma, so cancer of the blood vessels in her chest.
mhm,
And she was in tremendous pain. I wasn't there. My sister was there in Florida, but she she had a in-home hospice nurse who was administering morphine for the pain, but the pain was greater than the morphine, and my mom was crying out in pain and moaning and yelling and just in terrible, terrible pain. And she asked the nurse if she could just give her the final dose. And the nurse said, "I'm sorry, Miss Peggy, but I can't do that. I'm not authorized to do that," is how she said it. And my mom said, "Well, am I authorized?" And she looked up in the corner of the room and her eyes rolled back in her head and she was gone, just like that. And so when you're saying, like, we have this choice to just put this down, it makes me think of how my mom just put it down. Like she realized she could just put it down and she just put it down.
Yes, the same with my mother. Her life was a struggle, and she surrendered to illness. I mean, I hated it. I was conflicted, and later I was angry. I didn't even know I was, you know. Why are you more relaxed with colon and liver cancer than I've ever seen you before?
Mm,
I've heard it described as the the situation sort of necessitates energy being redirected away from mind because there isn't energy to engage with those thoughts. So
mm,
directing away from mind, there's peace. There's peace in whatever is you know, whatever's coming up. It can
yeah,
happen, and in that case, it did. And then
yeah.
you're there, pissed off that she's at peace. Why are you peaceful? You're supposed to fight. It is always a
It's
choice.
beautiful.